Spock, Sproul, Spriggle, Mr. Sprigglehampton. Recently, I took some bad advice. A friend told me that there was a show on network television that was actually good, and I believed them. My wife and I invested 8 hours of our lives in watching Revolution. If you like this program, I'd like to think we can still be friends, but I didn't like this program. There's one character in particular named Miles McTavish or something, and he's played by Twilight's dad. And he was a bad guy at the beginning of the show or before the show started, but then he turned into a good guy. And so everybody's conflicted about that because now he's a good guy, but he used to round people up, put them in camps, and kill them with swords and things like that. And so I felt like the most realistic part of the show was that everybody was skeptical of this recent convert to good guyism. In the same way, see what I'm doing there? In Acts chapter 9, we've got the story of Saul, who was a bad guy, he was rounding people up and killing them, and now he's about to come out as a good guy, and that's probably going to be weird for both sides, because the bad guys are going to be a little suspicious of that, and probably maybe even angry about that, and the good guys probably aren't going to welcome him with open arms because of the whole stoning thing. So we'll see how it plays out in Acts chapter 9. I'm Matt Whitman. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour. Enjoy. We're in Acts chapter 9, verses 19 through 25. 19. And after taking some food, he regained his strength. Saul spent several days with the disciples in Damascus. He's in Damascus because he was on his way there to kill Christians. God interrupted him, called him out of his killiness into being on team good guy. And now Saul has regained his vision and apparently regained his strength. And what's the first thing he does? Well, he goes and connects with the people he was on his way to kill. So, success. He found the Christians in Damascus after all. Failure, he didn't kill them very well. In verse 20, we're going to see Saul scratch another item off of his Damascus bucket list. It says, at once he began to preach in the synagogues that Jesus is the Son of God. On the one hand, it's another success for Saul. He was supposed to go up there and go to the synagogues. Check. On the other hand, this is a big reversal because he was supposed to go and kill and imprison the people who were saying that Jesus is the Son of God, not so much repeat that himself. Something big has happened. People notice it as well. Verse 21. All those who heard him were astonished and asked, isn't he the man who raised havoc in Jerusalem among those who call on this name? And hasn't he come here to take them as prisoners to the chief priests? Well, that's the logical question. I'm sure everybody who was a Christian, and they still would have been going to synagogue, were very surprised to see Saul show up at synagogue. They knew who he was. They knew what his reputation was. There would have been a buzz about that. The guy gets up to talk, and what they're expecting to hear is, give me your Christians. And instead he gets up there and starts talking about Jesus. And I'm sure that the whispers and the mumbles under their breath went from terrified to really curious to pretty excited. Well, if they did have questions about it, and it seems like they were a little on edge and suspicious, a lot of that's going to get answered with what we hear about in the next verse, 22. Yet Saul grew more and more powerful and baffled the Jews living in Damascus by proving that Jesus is the Christ. We're going to find out from the larger context that by proving, we mean Paul/Saul's own story is going to prove the validity of what he's talking about. He's going to perform well in the realms of logic and theology, and God is going to back up the reality of Saul's story and testimony with miraculous things that are going to be happening in a pretty significant volume. Before I read verse 23, the attentive reader would probably have a question in their mind saying, every time somebody got into it with the Jewish leadership and the Jewish leadership felt like they were losing or were being threatened, they turned to thoughts of murder and violence very quickly. I wonder how long it'll take for them to turn on their former ally, Saul. Let's find our answer. Verse 23. After many days had gone by, the Jews conspired to kill him. The answer is one lousy verse. So some time passes. We don't know exactly how much, but it was long enough for these arguments to unfold in such a way and the miracles to happen in such a way that these people were all sure that this wasn't an act from Saul and that Saul was definitely a threat, and he was a threat that they couldn't handle with reason or logic or theology or the Bible, so they're just going to murder him. Verse 24, but Saul learned of their plan. Day and night they kept close watch on the city gates in order to kill him. So here's the thing. Damascus, walled city, or at least the middle part of the city would have been a walled city, because that's how most of these cities were at this point. And you've got only a couple of access points to get in or out. This was part of the way the cities could control security and enact justice. People had to go through there eventually, so that was the plan here. You just set up shop, you have a spy or two, sit there and wait for him to go by, And when he does, they notify the people who need to be notified. You grab him, you kill him, everything's solved. You don't have to really do a manhunt door to door this way. It's an easy solution. Well, Saul, who we're going to discover as we go along, is very, very smart, sniffs out the plan, is made aware of it, and is going to have to come up with another solution. Here's the plan. Verse 25. But his followers took him by night and lowered him in a basket through an opening in the wall. Well, that's a good idea. It'll get around the gate problem. So Saul gets lowered out in this basket, and this says a couple of things to me. One, it says that he had received a degree of acceptance from the Christians in Damascus. They bought it. They came to believe that this really was from God, that Saul wasn't who he used to be anymore, and now that he's on team good guy, apparently. I also think as Saul's getting lowered out the window, wadded up like laundry in this basket, it has to be occurring to him, Jesus was right. I am going to suffer for this name. This is going to be a tough run. Because this guy had it on easy street up until the conversion thing on the road to Damascus happened. What he thought was the popular view with the state. It was the popular view with powerful people. And when you think whatever the powerful people think, you're in great shape. But we see an age-old lesson here. As soon as you get on the other side of them, they're not so friendly at all. And the relationship that he had with them is exposed for what it was. They were unified in violence, not really in true agreement. They're not really true brothers or friends. And now he's going to be on the run from these people for quite a while. 3 pretty quick observations. First of all, the way Saul convinced people on the side of the Christians that he was with them and convinced people on the side of the violent allies he had before that he was no longer with them was multifaceted. Some of it was testable and provable. Some of it wasn't. Some of the public miracles that occurred surely looked like the other public miracles that occurred, and people could go and look for themselves to see if that was real. The logic, the reason, the theology, we did the Republican debate here a couple weeks ago, and somebody thought everybody won, and there were 10 contestants. They couldn't have all won. When you get into the realm of reason, not everybody's going to see it exactly the same way. So it's not necessarily that Paul was so right and so logical that everyone was just blown away and couldn't help but automatically think what he thought. But there was a preponderance of evidence to say his reasoning makes more sense than their reasoning. And most people apparently were buying that, or he wouldn't have gained momentum and been viewed as a threat. I point this out to say, look at how God is using multiple things to relay truth about what he's doing in this guy's life and what he's trying to accomplish in Damascus in general. It's not just one secret thing and you better take it or leave it. Good luck discerning whether or not it's true or not. There's a lot of aspects to this so that a lot of different people who are wired a lot of different way would have good reason to come around and understand what God was trying to do here through Saul. A second observation from this passage. Saul did not mess around. He sat around only long enough to eat some food and start to feel a little healthier, and then he went straight into the teeth of the thing, right to the synagogue, right to the leaders, right out to the streets, where he's talking about all of this stuff. If my life changed that dramatically, that quickly, I think I'd lay low for a long time, regroup, gather my thoughts. The fact that this guy went out and was that effective for the other team that quickly is remarkable at least, even miraculous at best. And it certainly says something about his character. He was convinced this was the thing to do, and he didn't tarry. He just got right on it. Last observation. I really respect how the people of Damascus, the Christians that is, took the grace that God had showed them and passed that along to Saul. If I were in that spot and my friend, my Christian brother, got murdered by this guy, I'd be pretty slow to forgive. And if he came along a few weeks or months later and was like, oh, I don't even think that anymore. I'm actually with you guys now. My first impulse wouldn't be to say, yay, awesome. Well, come on over, hang out with us then. Here, we'll clear a seat at the lunch table. No, I'd still be mad because you killed somebody that I really, really like and you were trying to kill me a minute ago. How do I even know this is legitimate? I'd be tempted to do the thing that I've done at times where I say, oh, look who suddenly wants to change. Oh, you take this really seriously now. Oh, that must be very important to you. That kind of jerky, condescending skepticism is understandable. It's something I've employed at times in my life, but it's not beautiful. What's beautiful is when somebody imitates the grace of God in giving that grace away to somebody else. In this case, they sized it up a little bit to make sure that it was legitimate, and then they seem to have just welcomed him and embraced him, and even went a step further than that in that they put their own necks on the line to protect his. They truly welcomed this guy as a brother, even after all he did. They allowed him to change. And gracious people, the people I respect most, are people who allow the people in their lives to change. They understand that when somebody realizes that something about their life is busted up and broken and they want to do it different, the best thing they can do is just let them, help them, be encouraging. I admire that. It's something I want to try to imitate in my own life, and I thought it was worth pointing out. Next time around, we'll look at what happened when Saul went down to Jerusalem, where all of these wounds were still much more fresh. We'll see how those two parties navigated trying to get on the same page. Okay, this was a very fun week for the 10-Minute Bible Hour. There was a big influx of new people, a bunch of skeptics, a bunch of people who were oriented toward belief in this kind of thing. Big welcome to both of you. I've already had a bunch of really fun conversations in the comment section on Twitter and other places. So yeah, thanks for being willing to think it through with me. Even if we don't come to the same conclusions, it's always fun to process things that really matter with other people of reason and goodwill. Thanks for being that, and thanks for being here. I hope you continue to like the show, and I hope it's something that you are a part of for the long haul. I'm Matt Whitman. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour, and I'm going to have another one of these ready in a week. See you soon.